Hi, I'm really pleased to be here and to follow such an excellent presentation to start with is going to be very difficult. I think you mentioned that you had a pretty good pathway to diagnosis. What I'm going to try and do is give you some facts and figures that we have. I'm presenting data on behalf of 3 of my colleagues who I can bring with me in picture form only. We've got Matthew on the far left side, we've got Nikki in the middle, and Sally, who did do quite a lot of work with us in the past, but she's moved on to Cambridge now, and some of you may have seen Sally at a previous conference. And we're what is called the lead cancer registry for sarcomas. We also do breast cancer, and there is a registry in each of the regions in England. And what we do is try and collect information about all the cancers in the people in our region. And when you're the lead registry for somewhere, then you can have access to all the data about those cancers for the whole of England. So what I'm going to do is talk to you today about diagnosis of bone cancer. I'm going to show you some graphs, and don't worry about those. I'll try and pull out the most important bits for you from the graphs. But again, if anybody really wants to come and talk to me afterwards about any of these things, then I'll be here all day. So please do come and talk to me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how common bone sarcoma is, whereabouts in the body the sarcoma occurs. There are some different types of bone sarcoma, and they're more common in different age groups, so that's quite useful to know. Then I'm going to talk a bit about routes of presentation, how people actually get in to be seen and to be treated, and then look a bit at treatment patterns. So first of all, if I've got access to a database which contains 25 years worth of data about bone cancer, so all the way from 1985 through to 2009 for England. And in that time period, just about 9,500 bone cancers were diagnosed in England at that time. And it's a very rare condition. In this room, it doesn't seem rare because you've all had experience of it. But actually, it's around 8 per million people, so it really is very, very rare a condition. It's slightly higher now than it was. And this is a graph which actually shows you on the left-hand side, it's 1985 to 1987, so that's at the beginning of our data. And on this side, we've got the most recent years, which is 2007 to 9. And you can see at the bottom in pink is the females, and at the top in blue are the males. And you can see bone cancer slightly more common in males than in females, because that's the graphs up here. And you can see there looks as though there's a little bit of a rise at the end, but that's not a significant rise. So each year you might expect to find about 500 cases in England, so really it's not very many. If you put it in context of, say, breast cancer, you're probably getting something like 35,000 breast cancers in England every year. So you are looking at a very rare condition in terms of bone cancer compared to that. So whereabouts do you get bone cancer? The most common sites, I'm sure you know, are in the lower limbs, where about 38% of the bone cancers occur, in the pelvic bones and in the upper limbs. And what you've got here going from the left to the right is different age groups of people, all the way from people who are very young, from 0 to 9, all the way up on this side to people who are over 80. And what you can see from the patterns of the colours, you can see the bones of the lower limb, that you get more of those in the younger age groups, and then as you get older, then the pattern changes and you get more in the pelvis as you get older. So pelvic tumours become more common in the elderly, and you can also see you've got very small numbers in the vertebral column, in the ribs, the sternum, in the pale blue, and the skull and the face. And then sometimes we have records for people and it doesn't actually say where that tumour was, and they would usually be very late stage diagnoses which haven't had the sort of workup that we've heard about from Andrew. So what about these different types? These are the main types, and what you can see here, I'm going to talk particularly about these 4 most common subtypes, and you can see there's osteosarcoma in the dark blue, and again we've got the age groups along the bottom, chondrosarcoma in a sort of magenta colour, the Ewings, which we've heard about already, in the pale blue, and you can see that is much more common in younger age groups. You can see that the pale blue sort of disappears off as you get into the older age groups. And then some rarer forms, but I'm not really going to talk about those today. So as you can see, the osteosarcoma has what we call a bimodal distribution, some in younger people and some in older people. You can see the chondrosarcoma goes up as you get older. That's the magenta one, gets bigger. And I've mentioned the Ewings already. So just to show you what these look like all on the same graph, so you get a feel for what age groups you're going to get the different subtypes in. On the top left hand, I've got the osteosarcoma distribution, and again I've got males in the dark blue and females in the pink, and you can see this bimodal distribution with a lot of them in the younger age group but also going off into the older age group. But the chondrosarcomas, you can see that it's very few in the really young people and mostly in this older age group. And then for chordoma, it's actually a very rare tumour, and you can see that because the axis on the left-hand side at the bottom only goes up to 60, and the others are going up to 500, 250, 250. So these are the numbers of tumours that you're actually seeing in each age group. So chordoma is a very rare one because the maximum is 50 that you ever get to. Whereas if you look at the osteosarcoma, you've got up to 400 in the 16 to 19 age group over there. But this just shows you the patterns, and you can see again that picture of the Ewing sarcoma being really very much confined to the younger people. And what we do is we plot these, as we call them, incidence curves. And again, you can see the same sort of pattern. So in the dark blue, you can see that you get quite a lot in the younger age group. It dips down in middle age, and then it starts to go up as you get older. That's this line here. The Ewings, if you pick that up, a lot in the young, and then it just dribbles off. And then you can see the chordomas are really, really rare, and that's why the green line isn't very high up on the graph. So that's the sort of pattern that we see. So what sort of treatment? You'll be familiar with the fact that there are specialist treatment centres. There are 5 specialist centres now, GMOS, London, Oxford, Newcastle and Royal Orthopaedic. And in part of the period I was looking at, and I was interested that you mentioned Bristol, that was working as a specialist centre in 2000 to 2007 and obviously worked pretty well. So what do referral patterns look like? This is a map of England, and these little sort of scrawly lines are, you can see the centres, the big centres with the dots in the middle here, and these lines tell you where all the patients lived that went into those centres. So you can see here that one person who went into the London centre lived, or at least maybe more than one, lived right down here and travelled all that way into this specialist centre for treatment. And so those lines just show you how the centres are gathering together people to have expert treatment. And the other graph that I will show you, is these are Bristol down the bottom here, and also GMOS, and it's just I put these separately because they get lost in the lines of spaghetti on the other graph. But again, you can see that those centres pull in people from really quite a long way, and particularly you can see that Bristol was pulling in a very large number of people from the peninsula down at the bottom. So these are sort of where people are being pulled into the specialist centres and which centres they're going to. And you can see it really is rather like a mass of spaghetti. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because you live near one centre that you'll go to that one. You may end up going to another one. But hopefully you'll get good treatment because you've gone into a centre. So how many people actually get into those centres, those specialist centres? And these are some data for 3,500 bone sarcoma cases from 2000 to 2007, and we're just about to update those to see whether things have changed, but I thought it would be quite nice to see what they looked like in the past. And what you can see here is actually only 38% of people were actually first seen in one of those specialist centres. And that sounds like you were seen one place and then referred in. And you say you'd be in the box of the 56% that were ever seen in a specialist centre. But some people never get into a specialist centre at all. And that's what the orange boxes are showing you, that there's really quite a high proportion of people, at least in 2000 to 2007, that didn't get into the specialist centres. And hopefully when we update the data, we're just waiting to get the 2010 data so that we've got another 3 years, 2008 to 2010. And then hopefully we'll see that there's an improvement in the proportion of people that actually get into the specialist centre. Does getting into a specialist centre vary with age? And you can see the big green band at the bottom is that you are much more likely to be referred into a specialist centre if you're younger. That is either seen a specialist, so that's the green bars here, and you can see if you're older, then you may never actually see a specialist. And what sort of treatment do you get? So this is looking at the surgical treatment in particular. And if you saw a specialist first, which is the top line, then you'll have your surgery in that specialist centre, and you can see there's a really more than 75% of people who saw a specialist, the first person they saw was a specialist, will have treatment in that specialist centre. If they saw a specialist eventually, then around 50% of those people will actually have their surgery in that specialist centre. But some of them may have already had their surgery in the non-specialist centre, and they may then have another type of surgery, which is the orange box here, perhaps because the surgery that was done in the first centre wasn't perhaps what the specialist would have recommended. And those are the ones that we would probably be most concerned about, that the operation that they had in the non-specialist centre perhaps wasn't the best operation to have. So hopefully we will have a look at whether that's improved in the next few years when we get the next set of data. And does having surgical treatment vary with age? You can see the youngest age group up at the top, the 80 pluses at the bottom. And again, you can see that there's a very good correlation between age. If you're younger, you're much more likely to have the surgery than if you're older. And that's probably something we need to think about, and whether we're being ageist in these decisions or whether it's actually got something to do with the type of tumour that you've got and whether you can actually operate. And we're very keen in cancer in general to say that it's not your chronological age that matters, it's your biological age. Some people are very, very fit when they're older, and therefore they should be treated as much as you can, not just because they're older and you say, oh, well, we won't do an operation. So we'll hopefully see that this changes. It's certainly changed in breast cancer with the introduction of the screening programme and the age extension in that. Then older people are definitely getting more operations now than they used to. And it's all about your biological age, not your chronological age. That is how old you are in years. And does it matter where your tumour was, whether you're going to get surgery? And of course, the long bones of the legs and the arms are the areas where you're most likely to have your surgery. And again, we've divided them into the green was the specialist centre, the red is surgery in a non-specialist centre, and the orange is surgery in both. And I think these are the ones that, again, would be slightly worried. These are the ones where you're actually having two sets of surgery, where maybe the first set of surgery wasn't as good as you would have got if you'd gone. And that is particularly common in the short bones of the arm and the short bones of the leg, but it is seen across the board. So that was a very quick romp through. I'm very happy to talk to people. I hope you've got some messages from those. I'm always a bit wary of putting loads of graphs up, but hopefully I managed to explain what the graphs mean. And what I really am looking forward to is getting the next 3 years' worth of data to see whether things have improved. And again, just to mention to my colleagues, Matthew, Nikki and Sally, and also to John Shelton, who gave me the data on the referral patterns. Thank you very much.